Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Jack Kirby Day and we're taking a look at New Gods, issue number 5, cover dated November 1971. First things first, so happy because finally Mike Royer is on the book, inking Kirby, and we're really moving into the golden age of the Fourth World Saga and the New Gods and all that kind of stuff. Just because I think Mike Royer's much closer to Jack Kirby's original intent in the pencils when he's inking, and very true to what Jack Kirby is laying down. So very happy to see him finally on board on this cover and on the interior art as well. I feel like this issue is a bit of a turning point for New Gods for a few reasons, so I'll mention them here before I talk about the cover. The actual title is no longer Orion of the New Gods. I'm not sure if that happened last issue or this, but I think I might have noticed it and mentioned it. So I think it happens this issue where the title officially moves over to being titled New Gods. And although the focus is still a lot on Orion in this issue, as we move along, it's going to be kind of Orion and other characters. And some issues will focus completely on other New Gods characters that are not Orion. So it feels like Kirby's starting to get his footing with the New Gods, as opposed to, I feel that he already kind of had it with Jimmy Olsen, just lots of wacky stuff going on, right? The Forever People, the whole concept from issue 1 is pretty much still around. And he's introducing, Darkseid actually has appeared a lot more in Forever People than in any other Fourth World book up to this point. So, really that's kind of the basis of that book, the Forever People, with kind of Darkseid as an antagonist in the background, Glorious Godfrey as well. Mr. Miracle, he's a super escape artist. That's what's been going on for the first 4 or 5 issues as well. But with New Gods, it felt like he was bouncing around and trying different things. There was an issue that focused more on Black Racer. We still have the human characters around up to this point, right? That are kind of, the New Gods' connection to humanity and maybe the characters that are meant to represent the reader. So the reader associates with. But within this issue, the seeds are sown for those characters kind of go by the wayside, and by next issue I think they're not even around anymore, except for a few exceptions I'll talk about in this issue, but that's also characters who are going to continue on. One specifically, Terrible Turpin, is introduced in this issue here. So this really feels like where Kirby's starting to really figure out what New Gods is about, and thankfully we've got Mike Royer on really doing some good stuff on his art. So as you can see on the cover here, when I think of Kirby and his art in the 70s, this is exactly the look I think of. Orion, He-Man's look is this is He-Man. This is exactly He-Man right here. The hair, almost the mold of that first He-Man action figure is pretty much taken from here. It feels like the open mouth with the teeth and stuff. And the designers, I've talked about this before, of the He-Man cartoon and, the toy line, the original toy line, definitely took a lot of inspiration from Kirby. That just makes sense, right? Also hinting at, on the cover here, already giving us a shot of a creature that's going to be introduced. It's got a weird kind of bony protrusion in the front that's meant to be like a club. Gotta say it's kind of penile for sure. I don't think that was Kirby's intent, but I just think it adds to the kind of crazy surrealist design of this creature that we'll see more of within the issue, and I'll talk to that when we get there. See the mutate monster unleashed on the seas of Earth. This one here, read Spawn, and remember that Spawn, because as I open this book up, first thing you're going to see is that. And how crazy is that if you know about Tom McFarlane and the Spawn comic, the title that was actually used was designed by someone else. He had an original logo for the book that was drawn by Tom McFarlane, but this one here to me does kind of resemble the Spawn logo that eventually became what we saw on the cover, other than obviously the skull there. It's just a bit of coincidence, I think, unless the guy who designed it, I think was the letterer, Tom Wojciechowski. Am I mistaken in that? Let me know in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's what I'm not misremembering this. Maybe knew about this comic and took a little bit of inspiration from it just for the kind of spacing and the size of the letters and stuff. Maybe, I don't know. If anyone knows anything about that, let me know. Kirby right away, starting off with some cosmic stuff. Unfortunately, DC Comics production in the 70s, not quite ready for Kirby collages. So, we've seen a few over the Fourth World books in the last few months to varying degrees of success. I feel like the ones maybe in Jimmy Olsen were actually a little bit more successful than what we've got here. I think at some point they may have decided, I could be wrong, but at least for this one, they tried black and white, then different hues, monochrome kind of colors, greens and reds and stuff. And now they've just gone back to black and white. And there's just something that, that doesn't translate in the printing process, where a lot of the backgrounds just like this end up looking kind of murky. Still kind of like it though, because it gives it that 70s production value limitation gives it that 70s vibe for sure. And first thing I did when I took this book out of the bag before the review was to smell it. It smells like an old comic. I love it. Not too strong. That just, to me, that's the smell of the 70s. That and old cigarette stained basement living rooms with shag carpet. Those are the smells I associate with the 70s. Starting off with the Kirby trope of composition in the 70s that he was doing a lot of. The splash page, we got Metron traveling through the cosmos, right? And then boom, he throws that double page splash at us. They still haven't figured out how to do it properly. So maybe Kirby was the first to push for double page splashes back in the 70s, in the early 70s. Again, I don't know for sure, but it sure seems like it. I don't know of any other artists doing this before him. Please let me know in the comments. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But we're still getting that split in between the two. So it's almost more like, you know, the same image being split by a bit of panel framing and it being two big panels, right? But I mean, still an amazing piece of art. I can only imagine back in 1971 turning the page and seeing this. Just amazing. Just a great showcase for Kirby's abilities with, you know, angular lines, extreme foreshortening, interesting textures, interesting concepts. This whole book is just full of cool 70s, you know, Kirby concepts that at this point he was really kind of ripping and roaring on these books and just coming up with some great kooky stuff, surrealist stuff, cosmic stuff that I really like. A lot of my favorite stuff of the Kirby era from the 70s. So the Promethean galaxy, the place of the giants, alive, chained to the fragments of the devices they used in their attempts to smash the final barrier. So he's at the edge of the universe, and somehow, you know, those explorers who got there, who tried to break through, just weren't able to and are imprisoned in that wall. Wholly a Kirby concept, right? There were others with Metron's boldness and hunger. This one tried to engulf the barrier by enlarging his own atomic structure, by being big, right? What happened is not known. He failed. He drifts endlessly, larger than a star cluster, fused living, taking 1 billion Earth years to feel one heartbeat. That sentence. This is what I love about Kirby, you know, the art, the concepts, the writing, okay? Larger than a star cluster, fused, right? Taking 1 billion Earth years to feel one heartbeat. Just the idea of that. When I read that, I have to stop and thinking about it. And that's just such an interesting concept. Love it. And somewhere beyond lies the source, the greatest of mysteries, right? Behind all the secrets of the universe. Now we just get some weird kind of sideways psychedelic head. Another with prisoners of the edge of space. Just crazy stuff from Kirby. Love it. And then back to Earth and back to those human characters that I talked about that are going to kind of be disappearing over the next few issues, or maybe even in this one. I don't know if they come back other than the character, like I said, who's introduced right here, Terrible Turpin, who'll be a focal point later on in the New Gods issue and in a really kind of cool way. And he's one of the interesting human characters, so thankfully he sticks around. But for example, this guy who helped Orion, who kind of, you know, posed as his partner as a police officer, right? That's how he's introduced through him to that's how we're introduced to Terrible Turpin, right? And again, credits written, drawn, and edited by Jack Kirby, and starring a new Celestial with his ebony brush, Mike Royer. So really happy again to have him on board. And the interior art, again, just like the cover, reflects that loyalty to the Kirby pencils that I love so much. And just Royer did tons of stuff over Kirby from this point on, and it's the best Kirby stuff. Just gonna read this because, again, you know, Kirby's really running on all cylinders in this issue, and just some of the text and stuff is just so fun to read. While powers like Metron weave designs that span the universe, his celestial peers play a deadly game on Earth. The forces of New Genesis and Sinister Apocalypse have also made contact. The war is on, and some of it has been fought in Metropolis, led by Orion and his Earth allies of the New Gods. Love it. Bombast, hyperbole. I've said it before. Pure Kirby. And so Terrible Turpin is wondering about Orion and this, you know, this conflict that happened in the city of Metropolis, right? So he's a police officer for Metropolis PD, and basically Orion's friend here, one of his human friends from the team of humans that we're going to see later, we've met early on, basically covering for Orion, and trying as best as possible to keep Terrible Turpin away from meddling in the war between Intergang and Orion, or more on a vaster scale between the forces of Apocalypse and the New Gods, right? Because the war is being fought on Earth. So going back home, he's, you know, thinking he's got to warn Orion. So again, we've got a fairly short sequence here where, you know, we have the human characters, and one by one, Kirby's getting rid of them, right? So within the storyline here, You know, probably the illest fit, I think, in this whole is just this old dude, right? Part of the team that was helping Orion. So he says, this guy mentions Orion, we had to stick around to help him, right? We owed him because he saved us. He says, I remember, but I do have a business and a family to take care of. I can't wait here for much longer. This is my card. If I'm needed when Orion returns, I can be reached at this address. Okay, Victor, thanks for waiting. And I think for the rest of the whole New Gods Fourth World saga, we don't see this character ever again. So he's left it open if ever he, for story reasons, feels the need to go back to get him. But it really feels like Kirby has, you know, decided that, you know, let's phase out these kind of human characters that are friends of Orion. And later on, like I said, we'll still have human characters, but it won't be the regular cast that we see here. And the focus will be much more on the New Gods, Apocalypse, New Genesis, that conflict, much more cosmic goodness, surrealist stuff that is what I'm really into. This young man too, I think I'll leave too. My parents are probably getting anxious, but tell Orion that Harvey Lockman is standing by. Will do, friend. Okay, so 2 characters gotten rid of on one page, right? That, again, I don't think are ever going to come back. So we're left with the police officer who could, again, maybe has story potential, and the lady, because, you know, you want to balance it out with a man and a woman and various different types of characters, right? But I think we're going to go back to Terrible Turban at some point in this issue, but I think that's it, again, for these human characters and possibly for the rest of the series. We'll pay attention to that as we go through issues 6, 7, and 8. So now back to Orion, obviously, who is you know, the hero of the story. And just to come upon this, last issue he was facing off against Slig, and now he's clearly been imprisoned, and there's a huge clam holding his foot. Like, such an absurd concept, but I think it works really well. And just, again, that 70s weirdness that I really love. Here's some great look at, you know, Mike Royer inking. Just look at the power of, you know, the sinew and the muscles and those angular lines that Kirby uses that Royer doesn't try to fudge and change. He does the swoopy lines and all that stuff that I really love. And just, you know, the shaking of the muscles, just this whole panel, just so powerful. And in something so simple where Ryan's just basically trying to pull his leg out of this clam, which sounds funny when you say it out loud, right? So Slig basically shows him that he's got the power to kind of mutate creatures into bigger, more monstrous versions, of themselves. So he takes this small crustacean, as he says here, and then as he touches them, mutates them into some crazy kind of Kirby crustaceous lizard or something. But also Slig has the power to take the life away from those creatures that he creates, right? Orion here reacting to it. That thing, when your hand touched it, it disintegrated into tiny particles. And of course, he's saying that's the jolt that I used against you and could use against you again to subdue you, right? What a weird, creepy design. I love this shot of Slig here, just the angle of it, and just such a weird face and helmet. Great design, though. I don't know about the color scheme exactly, but I really like the design. So as Slig obviously walks off, as is a trope of comics, so that our hero has a chance to escape, getting into contact with his wrist circuits here to allow him to escape the clutches of the clam. And as he does, we realize that the clam is actually, again, I'll read this because I love this stuff. I'm going to read a lot bits here and there because I've said it before, there's just stuff that sometimes Kirby writes that's so evocative that I have to stop and think about it. Not necessarily this, but just if I find those moments, I'll try to read them. The pressure of the astral force increases until it begins to force the clam to yield to open to release its hold on Orion. Okay, that's just set up. And strength it surely has. The core of it breaks through the surface of the cave floor, a strange stem which draws energy deep in the bowels of the earth, right? But doesn't last long because Orion goes to the root of the problem and destroys the clam right there. This shark mutate guy, love again the design. The way Kirby's just interpreted the head of the shark, didn't even throw the fin in, just very interesting. I have to assume that Eric Larson was inspired by this when he did Mako in The Savage Dragon, right? Orion attacks him, makes short work of him too, and we're finally getting to see Orion cut loose a little bit. And you'll see something with his features, right? As he's going through this, you can kind of get a sense that Orion's into the violence, right? And that he enjoys it. And I'll point that out later on too, because it's kind of a plot point as well. Man, when you turn the page and you see something like this, I don't even know what I'm looking at, but it's just so cool. Is it a boat, a ship? What is it? It's, you know, in some, feels like it's in some sort of body of water, right? And then Orion is to think to himself, I remember it now. This mammoth handiwork of the deep six was adrift in the waters, huge and bulging. That's it. There was something large and alive in this giant harness, and whatever was in it is gone, right? You can obviously haven't seen the cover, probably assume that's the creature that we saw, the spawn, right? But this is like some sort of shell kind of harness that it was grown in. You know, you don't even see any of that. You just see the aftermath of it, but it's just, again, so evocative. And I can imagine, even though I will never visually see the spawn creature within the harness, I can imagine it here. And just because this drawing here of the harness without it is just so evocative. All the textures, you know, the wires or roots, I guess. Like, it's stone, it's organic. What is it? Is it technological? Who knows, right? It's just so cool. And why 70s Kirby is the best. A good example of it anyways. This is just kind of funny as he's running out trying to find his astro harness. Just casually picks off a guy and pushes him down here, subdues him. Back to Metropolis Hospital, right? And we've got Terrible Turpin on Earth speaking to a guy who was involved in the conflict between Intergang and the New Gods, right? Who, you know, almost didn't make it out alive, right? He says it. I was lucky, Terp. Lucky. You don't know what they're like until you move in on them. So Turpin's trying to find out more about this whole conflict between Intergang, Apocalypse, the New Gods, etc. Well, they come in all shapes and in all sizes and shapes, and you won't believe this. Some of them are good guys. Without their help, I wouldn't be here to make it my report. So he does admit that some of them saved him and kept him alive. I'll tell you about one, a big fish with a face like blue granite. When he found me tailing him, he turned his eyes on me and boom, I'm a mess of multiple fractures. A gang war between super spooks. From where? A big fish guy with a face like blue granite. Is he talking about Darkseid there? Not 100% sure. It could be Slig maybe, but he says he turned his eyes on me and boom. So I almost feel like the Omega effect was used on him or something, although that's supposed to completely disintegrate you. So I don't know. Not quite sure what's going on there, but evocative, whether it's Darkseid or whether it's one of his apocalyptic minions. So Turpin's on the case, and we're going to be seeing more of him later on. And again, as human characters go, I do find him more interesting. And when he's going to get involved in the next conflict, just a very good issue. And you got a hint of who he's going to be involved with here, because as we go through the sequence, a boom tube opens up here, and Kalibak is coming through. And this bit here of him, you know, kind of showing up on Earth, starting to do some major property damage, will be resolved a few issues later, because next issue is the Glory Boat, if I'm not mistaken, that features the spawn, and eventually we'll get to the conflict that's being set up here later on. Not in issue 7, I think in issue 8 actually. Could be wrong on that, but I think issue 7 is the backstory with Highfather on New Genesis. Anyways, getting ahead of myself. So Slig is back and realizes that, oh no, of course, Orion was able to escape it, and now he's got his Astro Harness and is more than a match for Slig with it. I don't know where the term anti-hero first started, right? Probably in the movies, I guess, but in comic books, you know, we talk about Wolverine, the Punisher, but that's kind of like mid-70s. This is early 70s. And I definitely feel like Orion here and what Kirby's kind of setting up in the sequence is maybe the first anti-hero. Maybe not so much in the first few issues of New Gods, but definitely here we're starting to see his more kind of violent, sadistic side. He's kind of reveling a little bit in the violence that he's dishing out here. And that's very interesting. You see it in his facial expressions and also in his dialogue. So again, interesting parts of Kirby in the Fourth World Saga is also his dialogue. So I'll read some bits here. So after the shot from the Astral Harness, Slig says, "That didn't finish me off, Ryan. I'm still going to get my hands on you." That's the kind of talk I like to hear, Slig. Tell me how I will die at your hands. Your reply is slow in coming. Perhaps you need a bit of urging. Talk, Slig, talk. You seemed so fond of it when I seemed to be at your mercy. You dogs of Apocalypse are eloquent when destiny favors you. So he's punching him and stuff, but then he's grabbing at his face. He's ripping his helmet off here. And again, the sadistic side of Orion kind of comes out here in the sequence. I see that your counterpart Mother Box, so your Apocalypse version of Mother Box, is where her guidance is sorely needed, near your head. So he's being insulting as well, right? But she'll protect you no more, you demon. And here we go. Like you, Slig, she must be rendered inoperative. Listen how she voices her fear. Scream. So Orion is kind of torturing and hurting the Mother Box, right? I know it's a piece of technology, but still, look at the expression on his face here, right? He's enjoying it. It's sad. War is terrible and sad, when even such wondrous mechanisms must pay for the flaws in us. The pressure increases. She must cease to function or, and there's an explosion, destruct. She's gone, Slig. When she couldn't serve you, your Mother Box chose to die. She loved you, Slig. So just reveling in all of it. And at this point, Orion is almost or pretty much like a villain. So definitely an anti-hero. And like I said before, the Wolverines and the Punishers of the comic book world. So I feel like Orion in this issue kind of becomes the first official anti-hero comic book character, at least in mainstream comics, right? In Marvel, DC. I just love this whole sequence. Very evocative, and the facial expression all the way throughout. Just good stuff from Kirby. I mean, the drawing is great too. And all these Royer thick lines, again, I'll remind you, these just thick jabs and squirrelies, just everything is fully the Kirby aesthetic, and I love it. So this is fun too. Noble, sanctimonious, new Genesis hero. Debatable. I'll kill you for the sham you are. Your love of destruction has forced your true face from hiding, Orion. The rumors about you are true. So we see finally his true face that he uses Mother Box to modify to look a little bit more human or normal, or more New Gods-esque, I guess. And yes, you croaking frog, they're true. Orion is flawed. More than that, you're a mad, tormented animal, Orion. I would be, Slig. I would be if it were not for the Mother Box. So we've had hints, right, before, and we're going to find out later that officially, yes, Orion is actually the son of Darkseid. So you can see in the phase here, you know, Kirby doing a bit of work so that we're slowly starting to make that connection. It hasn't become fully official yet, but there's hints that have happened all the way throughout this series. Mother Box protects me. She calms and restructures and keeps me part of New Genesis. So that's a very telling bit of dialogue there. So it's almost, you know, he says, Mother Box protects me. She calms and restructures. So she changes his face so he fits in on New Genesis, but also she calms him almost like a drug or something so that he's not quite as, you know, violent, sadistic, and animalistic as he is in the sequence here. It's almost like in the sequence, his true nature was able to come out. Mother Box wasn't able to suppress it for a while because he pushed it so hard. And all the visuals kind of play into that. And it's just such a great sequence. Really, really like it. Ha ha ha, Orion is his very own monster. Love all this dialogue. People have criticized Kirby's dialogue. I think it's great. I think Stan Lee's over-explaining style of dialoguing really sucks. Not a big fan. Much more into the Kirby stuff that we're seeing here. That revelation shall die with you, Slig, for between beings of powers like ourselves, there can only be one survivor. Or none. You'll die too, Orion. What a great sequence. If I can't kill you, the curse you bear eventually will. You'll never win this war. And you won't be there when it's over. Your killing days have ended. Once stirred in the fires of hate and interfere, there's no stopping the arrival of death. This is the darkest, up to this point, I feel, Kirby's ever been in any of his stories. Really enjoy this. The pits beneath your clammy cave seem deep enough to hold you for ages, Slig. Let the depths receive you. So, again, whether or not Orion is actually trying to kill him, it's kind of left ambiguous. You know, I guess Kirby doesn't want to fully pull the trigger on Orion being a killer. And I don't know if he ever does throughout the rest of the New God series, which is probably a good decision, 1971. And I'm okay with it too. So there's, you know, he's still redeemable, I guess. Love the shot of Orion here. Just something about the swoop of the hair and the inking just really works for me. And something I haven't seen Kirby do much of, I don't think ever. I'm sure he's done it here and there, but maybe I haven't noticed it. And it's not like part, I feel, of his regular repertoire of layouts and paneling and stuff. But, you know, just having this bit here paneled off and having this negative space here, haven't seen that a lot from Kirby. And definitely, to me, just helps bring another forward-thinking, kind of slightly futuristic vibe to the New Gods comic, at least as futuristic as it seemed in 1971 when it was already originally published, excuse me. And we're left with a shot for next issue, What to Expect. Finally, we get a close-up shot of Spawn, or the Spawn, I guess, that we saw on the cover. And we saw the Arnis that he was birthed from. And just basically the most intense, you know, whale crossed with an armadillo, with a rhinoceros, and just like a war whale, for lack of a better term. And again, only Kirby can come up with something like this, and I love it. Just that surrealist kind of aspect to it. Even the bony protrusion that looks kind of like a cock down here, you know, again, don't think that was his intention, but I'll take it as such. You know, he's just going around with a raging bony erection, ramming into ships, right? And that's what we're going to see in the next issue with the Glory Boat, which some say is Kirby's best issue of his whole career. We will find out, I guess, next time when we review that issue. So the Golden Age stuff I've covered here and there with past reviews. We're just going to skip it because I'm not that interested in it. To be honest, I'm here for the New Gods. Not that it's bad in any way, but I do prefer just staying focused on what we're looking at here. And, good that I'm going through all the pages because we could have skipped it, but there's a short little story here introducing, last issue was introducing Lonar. This one introducing another young god of Supertown. This one is Fastback. And interestingly, Vinnie Coletta still there inking. And looking through my Fourth World Omnibus, because I'm going to be covering, that's how I follow the order of the issues, how to cover them. I thought this might be the last bit of Vince Coletta inking that we're going to see, but no, we will see a bit more still on some Jimmy Olsen's and stuff. I don't know if Mike Royer eventually does come on to Jimmy Olsen as well. Again, we'll find out when we get there. But from this point on, officially, Mike Royer is pretty much inking everything, I think. But there's still a few issues in future reviews that have been inked by Vince Coletta already that we're going to be looking at. So again, you can see quite a difference between the art here, right? So this kind of hatching, vintagey kind of style that Coletta's doing here, and a lot of stuff that we know he's leaving out of the backgrounds. Definitely quite a difference between what Royer's doing and what Coletta's inking. And of course, I definitely feel, and I've said this before, Coletta's kind of like keeping it in the 60s and keeping it like more of an old school kind of style. And Royer's just pushing that into the future and giving a much more angular vibe, right? Like if we want to go down to just basics of what a lot of those differences are, Coletta tends to have softer, rounder kind of lines, and Royer just has sharper, more angular lines, which to me definitely work better with Kirby's pencils. If you ever go and check those out with the Kirby Collector or online, right, you can see that. Just a nice sequence in, focusing on this guy who's got, what's his name again? I already forgot. Let me check. Fastback. Yeah, so he's developed these shoes that allow him to be faster than anyone else. They say he's basically the second fastest after Light Ray. And these characters are referred to as monitors that are coming after him, trying to stop him. I assume that's like New Genesis version of truant officers, maybe for these young guys, or basically police officers, right? Or whoever, I guess, enforces the law. And, he's basically outrunning them all the way throughout. But then there's an interesting little part where he's like, the narration, suddenly the force comes into play. It's invisible but powerful. It drains the energy from Fastback's arrow pads and draws him down. No, not again. This happens whenever I reach peak speed. And of course, Fastback ends up where he usually does. This way, Fastback, we've been waiting. And basically what's introduced is that he's some sort of, I don't have enough information here to know if he's some sort of singer or some sort of maybe preacher of New Genesis religion or thought or philosophy. I feel that's probably what it is. It feels almost like he's kind of like a priest or a rabbi or something here, right? He's hurriedly helped into the appropriate garb and given the right book of songs. So songs is what makes me think maybe he's singing, but songs could also just be written word, right? Not necessarily a song that you sing. You'd better be at your best today, Fastback. Highfather's your audience for today. But I haven't rehearsed. I've been working on my arrow pads. Don't worry, we won't tell. Curiously enough, Fastback is plagued by an incurably beautiful voice, okay? So I guess that's part of the reason why he's, the priest-like character. And curiously enough, his roguish activities are somehow terminated in time for him to perform for Highfather. So he's almost the yin to the yang of Glorious Godfrey, right? So Glorious Godfrey is Apocalypse's version of kind of a seedy preacher, and maybe Fastback is the young optimistic priest or something. Or is it the wonder staff of Highfather that plagues Fastback? I like this. For is it not said that there is nothing swifter than the invisible force of its summons? So what they're implying here is that, yes, Highfather's not going to tell him that he did that, but he is actually the one using his staff to draw the energy from Fastback's flight devices, his shoes, and to bring him back down to Earth to now attend to his responsibilities. Well done, Fastback, but I do detect a few neglected passages. You should spend some time brushing up on them. So everything's just kind of implied here. And I like how Highfather doesn't spell it out for him. There's a bit of a nuance there, which was not something you would see in Stan Lee's writing over Kirby, and something I feel much more of here in other parts of the Fourth World Saga with, like I said, Kirby writing and me preferring the Kirby writing. especially on Kirby artwork and Kirby concepts. So there you go, guys. That is my review of the New Gods issue number 5. If you're still watching and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you sticking around. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. If you're interested in the comics I make, Big Baby, STARCRASHER, let me know, message me, and we'll work something out. Everyone, thank you once again for watching, and have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Subscribe! Like!